Our first speaker is Dr. Ghassan Abu Sitta, who is a British Palestinian associate professor of surgery and a plastic and reconstructive surgeon with a profound dedication to humanitarian efforts. Dr. Ghassan spent 43 days at various Gaza hospitals at the beginning of the genocide in what he described as 43 days of nightmare watching the genocide unfold. Please welcome Dr. Ghassan.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So thank you for this initiative, which is really critical. And although I do want to spend some time describing what has happened in Palestine, particularly in Gaza, it is critical for us to look forward and to start looking at what nurses in Canada can do to help rebuild the Palestinian health system. At the moment, there is no more Palestinian health system in Gaza. What began on the 17th of October with the bombing of Al Ahli Baptist Hospital has now reached its logical conclusion. If we go from the far north to the far south, we come across one destroyed hospital after another. In the north, there are two very partially functioning hospitals that can only run their operating room, and there's only one operating room in each hospital that's functioning when there is enough fuel, and that is very intermittent. And then you move from northern Gaza to south Gaza, and we see from Rafah, the European hospital has had to be evacuated on the orders of the Israeli army. Nasser Hospital, which is currently out of service because there's no fuel to run the generator, and Al-Aqsa Hospital, which is barely functioning because of lack of consumables and medication. And then in the north, the destruction of Shifa Hospital, total destruction, and turning it into a mass grave by the Israeli army, with over 400 patients and staff being killed. And so we have witnessed the destruction of the hospital. We've also witnessed the destruction of the clinics and the destruction of the infrastructure that is the main determinant of health. The destruction of water and sewage treatment plants, destruction of 80% of people's homes, thus forcing people into overcrowded, internally displaced centers, which are effectively schools that have been turned into these centers. Schools that had been designed to host 1,000 students now have over 10 to 20,000 inhabitants in each school. And just as I was waiting to join you, news came through of another of these schools, UNRWA schools, that was an internally displaced center being targeted by the Israelis, killing 15 civilians and over 30 wounded. In addition to that genocidal killing machine, which is the destruction of the health system and the destruction of health, we have an intentional man-made famine. And this famine is now being going on for long enough and is severe enough that my colleagues who came out of Gaza just before Rafah was attacked describe how a lot of the patients who are injured now are malnourished when they're injured. And therefore, they've had incidents of laparotomy wounds opening up, of dehiscences, because the patients are just not capable of healing their wound due to the severity of the malnutrition that they suffer from. And so we have, as part of the genocidal project, 3 killing machines going on at the same time. The bombs and the blasts, and there's a plentiful supply, thanks to Canada, the United States, Germany, United Kingdom, France, Holland, all of these countries who have increased their armament supply to Israel tenfold since the 7th of October. We have infectious diseases as a result of the destruction of homes, destruction of infrastructure, of water and sewage treatment systems, and the overcrowding. There are epidemics of hepatitis A, of gastrointestinal diseases, of respiratory diseases. And then there's the malnutritional malnourishment. And now this triad of death is working together. People who are malnourished and wounded are more likely to die of less severe wounds. People who have infectious diseases and are malnourished are more likely to die from their infectious diseases. And so what we hear about the death toll is only the tip of an iceberg of what is happening in Palestine. You also look at the wounded, over 85,000 wounded, of whom half are children. And of those children, we now estimate that between 4,500 to 5,000 have limbs amputated. And so that burden of care that is being unmet because the hospital system has been destroyed, these patients are languishing in these internally displaced camps, in tents, with their wounds untreated and unreconstructed. But it is critical that we fight against this certainty of erasure of the genocide project, and we actively talk about the day after. We have to try to imagine what it would take for us to rebuild the health system in Gaza. And therefore, I'm going to dedicate the rest of this talk to this idea. There is a concept that in conflict medicine called the ecology of war. And the ecology of war is the idea that if a war is sufficiently intense and prolonged, and we have never seen a war as intense as that one in Gaza, it changes the biosphere that people live in. And we define a biosphere, which is the social, biological, and physical conditions that people inhabit. And so we see how that biosphere of this genocide that people inhabit in Gaza, and it does not take a leap of imagination to understand that even once the war is over, that biosphere will continue. Those 80,000 wounded, those 4,000 to 5,000 children with amputation, all need surgery. And we know that a child with a war-related injury needs between 8 and 12 surgeries by the time they're adults. That a child who's had a lower limb amputation needs a new prosthesis every 6 months because their body is growing. And a small rudimentary calculation will tell us that these 80,000 wounded will require between 1.5 million to 2.5 million surgeries over the next 5 years to reconstruct these wounds and the sequelae of these injuries. Then you have the consequences of unmanaged and untreated non-communicable diseases. People with hypertension or diabetes or renal disease, whom for 9 months have not been getting regular medication, have not been seeing health staff. All of this means that these complications secondary to uncontrolled non-communicable diseases are going to be determining the health of people. When you have 22 to 26,000 orphan children, and our guess now over 60 to 70,000 is the real number of those killed, the social impact of that genocide is going to be a major determinant, not just of mental health, but of physical health. And so when we do imagine a Palestinian health system for Gaza, we need a health system that is fit for the new biosphere of genocide that will be left at the end of this war. Because we know from Israel's previous wars, it always tries to achieve what it failed in the war in the ceasefire. And therefore, nurses are going to play a critical role, as they always do, in this healthcare system. And that's why Israel has killed over 120 nurses. And of the 400 disappeared health workers, believed to be in these internment camps where people are being tortured all the time, according to UN agencies. A third of those 400 are nurses. And the reason for this killing and this internment is Israel understands that whereas a hospital, even one the size of Shifa Hospital, that is can be rebuilt in 2 years' time, 18 months, but training a nurse to the level of my colleague Tamer Yassin, who was one of the senior nurses in the burns unit, Shifa, and was killed a few days after I left Gaza. He had been trained as a nurse. He had specialized in burn care. He had received a master's degree in burn care. Someone like Tamer, in order to retrain a nurse to the same extent, in the same degree, and the same proficiency, is going to take a decade, if not more. And so Israel has targeted health workers, doctors, nurses, physiotherapists in a systematic way in order to ensure the destruction of this system. The destruction of the schools of nursing and the schools of medicine in Gaza means that also Israel is keen that future generations are unable to join the health system. And therefore, nurses in Canada, and especially those with academic posts, should be thinking on how they can help rebuild the nursing education system in Gaza at the end of this war. All of us have a role to play, not only in the political pressure that we need to exert in order to stop the genocide, but once this war is ended, once the Western governments have run out of excuses in order to give Israel as many extensions to the genocide as it needs so that it can finish the job. Once that happens, we need to be there to be able to help the Palestinian people rebuild their health system. But also, nurses are critical in shaping the discourse. Unfortunately, the humanitarian discourse around the war in Gaza so far has been extremely medicalized, and unfortunately has been led by surgeons and by doctors, with a failure to understand the importance of primary health care, a failure to understand the role of other health professionals. And so within the humanitarian sphere, it's critical that nursing leaders and nursing academics also advocate for a more rational response to this war in Gaza in the meantime. A few days ago, Israel released Dr. Muhammad Abu Salmiya, who is the medical director of Shifa Hospital. And the reason he was released, having been put in front of a judge 3 times, is that Israel could not find one single piece of evidence to incriminate him or Shifa Hospital. And this highlights the fallacy of the idea that the health system in Palestine and in Gaza had been used for anything other than treating of patients. Had Shifa Hospital really contained even 1% of what the Israelis had said, they would not have released Dr. Muhammad Abu Salmi. And so it is critical that we fight within our institution. And the medical institutions and the nursing institutions have been just as complicit in the system of genocide enablement as the media has, as the political institutions have. The nursing syndicates, whatever form they take shape, need to be verbal about the role of Israel in the targeting of nurses, need to be advocating for Palestinian nurses who've been arrested and are being tortured. And most importantly, they need to be advocating for a boycott of the Israeli Nursing Association, which admits that its members are now taking part in the torture of Palestinians and in the forced treatment of Palestinian prisoners inside these internment camps. And so the struggle is within our profession and out from against the governments that constitute the rest of this genocidal iceberg that Israel is only the tip of. And therefore, I call on you to double your efforts, because after 9 months, this war will shame humanity for millennia to come. The fact that the world allowed this genocide to continue for 9 months while it watched live, while we had the technology to see people being butchered on our phones, on our screens every day. Yet we allowed this to happen, having told ourselves that technology will enable us not to make the mistakes of humanity that happened when we only got the news days after or weeks after these massacres had been committed. So please excuse the short presentation, but I believe that 9 months on, we all know what is happening. We need to start thinking about what our response is going to be. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Abu Sitta, for your very critical insights and for sharing your experiences with us. Our next speaker is Nurse Aya Shakura. Aya is 24 years old and is a Bachelor of Nursing graduate. Aya worked as a nurse in Al Shifa Hospital in the north of Gaza and then was forced to evacuate to the south of Gaza, where she is now. Currently, Aya is volunteering at a medical clinic in Khan Yunis. Please help me in welcoming Aya. Aya? Hello? Yes?
Yes.
We can hear you, Aya. You can start.
Hello. Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
في كهرباء موجودة فشكلي نكمل. سمعاني؟
Yes, we can hear you.
اوكي. مرحبا، أنا آية شقورة من قطاع غزة، خريجة بكالوريوس تمريض أزهر غزة.
Aya, are you able to turn your camera on?
أغلاها بس ما في كهرباء.
course.
Because the electricity is off, that's why her camera is on, but because of the lack of electricity and lightning.
زيد موجود؟
أنا سامعك منيح يا تفضلي.
ما بس عشان ممكن تحكي لهم إنه ما في كهرباء موجود، عشان هيك شكلي مش مبين.
حكيت لهم مش مشكلة.
تمام. كنت بحكي إنه أنا آية شقورة، خريجة بكالوريوس تمريض من جامعة الأزهر في غزة، عمري 24 سنة.
So Aya is 24 years old. She has a bachelor degree from the Azhar University, and she's working in a medical point next to Khan Yunis. تفضلي يا آية.
يس. وأنا حاليا يعني كنت ما قبل الحرب كنت متطوعة في مستشفى الشفاء الطبي، كنت أشتغل في عدة مؤسسات، يعني ممكن نحكي إنه مؤسسات حكومية ومؤسسات مؤسسات خيرية، يعني ما كنت في بس.
So Aya used to volunteer and work in various institutions, medical institutions and nonprofit medical institutions in Gaza before the war, and volunteer mainly at the Shifa hospital. And I believe that changed after the war. تفضلي يا آية. So I think it's really hard, the connection in where Aya is, understandably. She's in a medical center next to Khan Yunis. She's just texting me now saying that the connection was well, there's no connection at the moment, and she's trying to log back in.
She's also texted me that there's no internet. She's trying to get back, but we do have a video of her. We did prepare in case the internet did cut off in Gaza. So we can play that video of Aya's story.
Yeah, we can play the video, and hopefully she will be back if any of the participants has any questions that they would like to pose to Aya.
There is no volume on the video. Could you please put the volume on the video, Aya's video? Please bear with us. We're just playing the video from Aya.
مرحبا، أنا آية فجورة من قطاع غزة، خريج بكالوريوس تمريض من جامعة الأزهر في غزة. ما قبل الحرب أنا كنت ممثلة في عدة مؤسسات، ولكن بالتحديد أنا كنت متطوعة في مستشفى الشفاء الطبي. ولكن إجت الحرب من 7 أكتوبر، نزحنا من بيتنا من الشمال للنصر الشاطئ، ونحن حاليا في مدينة خان يونس، تقريبا في مواصل خان يونس. حاليا أنا متطوعة في نقطة طبية في مدينة خان. طبعا التحديات اللي بيواجهها الممرضون والأطباء العاملين في النقاط الصحية والمستشفيات هو شعورهم بالخوف بأنهم يروحوا على المستشفيات بسبب استهداف المستشفيات، بمعنى إن ما في حصانة للأطباء والممرضون اللي عاملون في المستشفيات في النقاط الطبية. الحد الثاني هو نقص ونفاذ الأكسجين والوقود والموارد والأدوات، وما يضاعف من هذا النقص إنه 70% من المساعدات الطبية التي يتم إرسالها غير صالحة للاستعمال. وبعبارة أخرى بأنه كثير من المساعدات هي مجرد در للرماد في العيون، ومن ثم بأنه هذه القيود بتمنع العاملين في مجال الرعاية الصحية بأنهم يقدموا العلاج بأمثل وجه للمرضى والجرحى، وهو ما يتسبب بهذه المضاعفات. حتى بالنسبة للحالات البسيطة والروتينية اللي تتطلب مزيد من الموارد لمعالجتها، منذ الأيام الأولى للحرب بدأت المستشفيات بتقنين خدمات غسيل الكلى لمرضى الفشل الكلوي واللجوء للعلاجات المنزلية لتنظيف الجروح. وعلى مدى عدة أسابيع أفاد الأطباء في قطاع غزة بأن فرز الحالات أصبح يقتصر على تحديد من يمكن إنقاذ حياتهم، وفي بعض الأحيان اختيار من سينجو، وذلك بسبب حجم الهائل للطلب والنقص الحاد في الموارد. لقد كانت نية الاحتلال في إنهاك القطاع الصحي في غزة واضحة، لأنه في 14 أكتوبر، أي ما بعد مرور 7 أيام فقط على الحرب، أمر جيش الاحتلال بإخلاء عدة مستشفيات في شمال قطاع غزة، ولكن سرعان ما قررت الطواقم الطبية بعدم الإخلاء لأنها تعتبر مراكز طبية لمعالجة المرضى والمصابين. أكبر مثال على ذلك مستشفى الشفاء الطبي، حيث تم اعتقال مدير مستشفى الشفاء واعتقال عدة ممرضون وأطباء من داخل المستشفى. وأكيد هاي الهجومات لها تأثير سلبي على المستقبل المهني، لأنه أي شخص كان عنده نية بأنه يفوت أي تخصص طبي رح يغير رأيه خوفا على نفسه من استهدافات الاحتلال الهمجي. في سؤال بيحكي إنه كيف ممكن للعاملين في مجال الرعاية الصحية خارج البلاد إنهم يظهروا دعمهم للعاملين في مجال الرعاية الصحية داخل قطاع غزة، من خلال الاعتصامات، من خلال الهاشتاج على وسائل التواصل الاجتماعي، من خلال إعادة نشر أي فيديو بيتم نشره من خلال الممرضون والأطباء في قطاع غزة، بيظهر كمية المعاناة النفسية اللي بيعانوها الأطباء والممرضون، بيظهر حجم الدمار في المستشفيات، من خلال إرسال تبرعات للمنظمات الصحية في قطاع غزة، من خلال إرسال وفود طبية خلال الحرب وما بعد الحرب. للتخفيف عن عبء العاملين في مجال الرعاية الصحية، لأنهم بيواصلوا الليل مع النهار ولا يوجد أي ساعات راحة كافية بسبب ما يشاهدونه من إصابات، بسبب كثرة الإصابات في قطاع غزة. طبعا آخر شيء بنتمنى إن الحرب تنتهي، لأنه بكفي دمار، بكفي إصابات، بكفي شهداء، لأنه كل شيء تدمر، البنية التحتية تدمرت، ما في أي مكان سليم في قطاع غزة، المستشفيات أغلبها تدمرت، الجامعات تدمرت، كل الأماكن التعليم تم تدميرها، ما في أي مقومات للحياة في قطاع غزة. دعواتكم إلنا، وإن شاء الله يا رب الحرب تنتهي عن قريب وبنلقاكم في فرصة أحسن يا رب.
Okay, thank you, Aya, for that video. And I do see that she has gotten her connection back. So if she would like to say a few more words, you can. Go ahead, Aya and Zaid, for the translation.
احنا عرضنا الفيديو هلا، اذا بتحبي تحكي كم اشي ان شاء الله الكونكشن عندك منيحة. اذا بتحبي تضيفي اشي على اللي انحكى بالفيديو تفضلي.
صراحة حابة أضيف إشي.
اوكي تفضلي.
آم، طبعا في الحرب انتشرت كتير أمراض زي مرض التهاب الكبد الوبائي A، وطبعا انتشرت أمراض جلدية وأمراض بتسبب أمراض الجهاز التنفسي.
So to add to what was mentioned in the video, that since the war started, there's a lot of infectious diseases had spread, including hepatitis A and hepatitis C, and also some skin diseases that would easily be treated otherwise, and some respiratory diseases as well.
طبعا هاي الأسباب كلها بسبب إنه إحنا أغلب السكان عايشين في خيام، أو بس مش بس أغلبهم، الأغلبية العظمى ساكنين في خيام، وفي موجود بس يعني مثلا حمام واحد مشترك لمثلا 7 عائلات، 5 عائلات، يعني حمام مشترك لأكثر من عيلة. فطبعا هاي الحمامات المشتركة بتنقل الأمراض بصورة بشكل أسرع. وطبعا قلة مياه الشرب الصحية، طبعا هاي أهم نقطة إحنا بنعاني منها كتير. بصراحة إحنا بنشرب المية، وإحنا مثلا مش حابين نشربها لأنه ما في غيرها، ما في أي بديل، بس
One of
مضطرين يعني.
one of the main reasons for these diseases to spread very rapidly is because the absolute majority of the people are now living in tents and have been internally displaced, and they maybe sometimes up to 7 families share one makeshift washroom, and which makes it easier for these diseases to spread. Also, the lack of sanitary water, drinkable water. That also adds to the problem of the infectious diseases to spread, and they don't have the option. It's not that there's drinkable water and they choose not to drink it. It's just that they have no options at this point.
طبعا وغير الحالة النفسية اللي طبعا أغلبية سكان غزة، أو مش أغلبيتهم، كل سكان غزة حالتهم النفسية كتير سيئة. فهذا بشكل بسبب تشنجات وضيق تنفس عند أغلبية السكان. فهذا بشكل إشي سلبي على السكان يعني.
Also, to add to that, there's the psychological impacts of the war, where the majority, if not all, of the whole population of Gaza are suffering from, which is causing panic attacks, seizures, shortness of breath, and this is also impacting their livelihoods.
طبعا هذا الإشي أنا اهتميت إنه أحكي فيه، لأنه صراحة خواتي التنتين صار معهم هذا الإشي، وأنا أيامها ما قدرت إنه أنا أعمل لهم إشي بسبب إنه أنا خفت عليهم، وما قدرت أتمكن من إنه أعمل لهم أي حاجة، وتوترت يعني أيامها. فإنه خفت إنه يصير لهم إشي بسبب إنه الأشياء اللي إحنا بنعيشها وبنمر فيها.
This is important for Aya to mention, because this affected both her sisters. I believe we're talking about the psychological impacts of the war, and she was unable to support them, and this is still ongoing.
طبعا غير الأكل اللي هو طبعا الأكل الغير صحي بسبب أمراض برضو عند الناس. ما في أي أكل صحي وما في أي أكل فيه بروتينات إنه الناس تتغدى. فبقلة البروتينات وقلة طبعا المعلبات برضو بتشكل إنه يعني أغلب الأكل كان موجود بس معلبات، ما في أي أكل موجود فيه بروتين. طبعا الأطفال انقطع البيض والحليب بأشهر، يعني أشهر كتير انقطع البيض والحليب، وما الأطفال ما أكلوا أي إشي في أي إشي فيه بروتين وأكل صحي.
Also
وهذا
the
أثر على نموهم هذا.
also the lack of nutritious food in Gaza has added more impact to these problems, where most of the food is canned food. It lacks a lot of protein. It lacks any nutritious facts. Also, it impacted the growth amongst children because there was a shortage or a lack of eggs and milk for children and infants to help them build their immune system and get the proteins that they need.
وطبعا التسع أشهر هاي مش قليلة. ما قدرنا نحصل على أي إشي منيح في هاي الفترة.
And over the past 9 months, it's a very long period to have nothing coming in terms of resources and food. And things are getting worse.
وخلص إذا في حدا راح يسأل أي إشي.
I is happy to answer any questions if they come up at a later stage. شكرا كثير آية، يعطيك العافية.
ولو الله يعافيك يعطيك العافية.
Thank you. Thank you, Aya, for sharing your story with us. As you guys witnessed firsthand the effects of this genocide, no electricity, or the internet is unstable, but she still made it with us, and I do really appreciate her sharing her story with us. Next, we have Gazel Haroub. She's a 22-year-old nursing student from Qalqilia, Palestine, the West Bank. Gazel is currently studying at An-Najah National University in Nablus and will speak to life as a nursing student living and studying under Israeli occupation. We welcome Gazel with us today.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
At the beginning, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Gaza Strip, and I'm from Palestine, specifically Qalqilia. And I'm a fourth-year nursing student at An-Najah National University in Nablus, which is 30 minutes away from my city. But due to the presence of Israeli occupation and their checkpoints, this distance has become 5 or 6 hours. This is from my personal experience. As one time, my family and I were stopped, and when they read my name, the one bearing the letters of the word Gaza, they photographed me, mocked us, and raised a gun in my brother's face. The checkpoints that the Israeli occupation has erected at the entrances of the West Bank cities are the first conflict I should discuss. They search cars, beat and insult citizens. It doesn't matter if there is a nurse, doctor, or even paramedic among them. Additionally, when an ambulance passes, they don't care about transporting the emergency case. Rather, they stop the ambulance and search the ambulance. And it's also possible that they don't allow it to pass. The other thing I want to talk about is ongoing raids in West Bank cities, such as Jenin, Tulkarem, Nablus, Qalqilia, and others, where they bomb and demolish homes and shoot randomly. When casualties occur, ambulance and nurses prevented from reaching casualty areas, and they are prevented from transporting and treating the wounded as well, and they may be at risk of being killed or injured. While there were cases in which hospitals were attacked, and among these cases was the storming of Ibn Sina Hospital in Jenin, by special forces disguised as a doctor and nurses on January 30th, 2024. And they assaulted the nursing staff present there and assassinated 3 young men inside the hospital. This threatens the lives of the nurses and reduce from their professional performance, as they will be in constant fear that the Israeli army will storm the hospital at any time and obstruct their work, and they may be arrested. International law is supposed to provide general and specific protection for civilian sites, including hospitals, in accordance with 4th Geneva Convention and Additional Protocol 1 and 2 to the 1977 Geneva and 1954 Hague Conventions. Nursing student Maimouna Hararshe was also murdered in Hebron on April 24th, 2024. And Dr. Said Jabarin, a general surgery specialist in Jenin, was targeted on May 21st, 2024, while on his way to work, and 6 other citizens were murdered. This is very small part of the events taking place in the West Bank. And if we want to actually talk about what's happening, we need volumes. We don't know how long the crimes of the Israeli occupation will be camouflaged, misled, and overlooked. The suffering that the Palestinian people are experiencing has no limits and cannot be described in any word. I appeal to all our colleges in the world to fully stand in solidarity with our cause by speaking out about the rights of healthcare workers to do their duty to the fullest with full and comprehensive protection, and to communicate our voice to the competent authorities capable of providing protection and support while we carry out our medical duty in Palestine and continue to do so. Publishing real events and pictures showing brutal occupation violations in hospitals, clinics, ambulances, and medical bodies as a whole. And direct solidarity of possible by forming joint group with the health administration team to provide field expertise and skills. Thank you so much. وبعتذر إذا كان في من حكي مش واضح باللفظ الإنجليزي.
Thank you very much, Ghazal, for sharing your story. If you would like to say a few words in Arabic, that would be great as well. And I just want to remind you all, our attendees, if you do have questions, you can go ahead and write them in the chat, and we'll go through our Q&A at the very end after everyone speaks. So, Ghazal, if you have a few more things to add in Arabic, go ahead.
ممكن ترجم لي ايش حكت انه اذا فينا نحكي بالانجليزي اذا فينا نحكي بالعربي.
Yeah, Zaid is here to translate.
يعني اظن كلامي كان هيك ملخص للي احنا بنواجهه بالضفه، وعن جد هو جزء صغير كثير من اللي احنا بنواجهه بالاقتحامات
Yeah, what she mentioned about what's happening in the West Bank is just a glimpse of the full story and the full picture of what's happening.
كمان إذا أي حد بحب يسأل عن أي شيء بالضفة مستعدة أجاوب.
And if anyone has any questions to Ghazal specifically about what's happening in the West Bank, she's happy to answer.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ghazal. We're going to move on to our final speaker for today. Last but not least, one of our own, Nurse Ahmed Kuta. Ahmed is a Palestinian Canadian nurse who went to Gaza to defend his thesis and ended up stuck in the ongoing situation. He stayed at Al Shifa Hospital as a volunteer and faced all types of death in the north of Gaza. He was able to return back to Canada a month ago and is here with us to share his story. Welcome, Ahmed.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum everybody, everyone. If you can just hear me, give me a thumbs up.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. So that pretty much introduced me. Dr. Ghassan, my colleague Aya, and Ghazal, they pretty much said everything that needs to be said. But just to say stuff in a perspective of a Canadian that has lived in Canada for the majority of his life, I went to Gaza, like in the past couple of years, I've been in Gaza in and out. So I know how life in Gaza is. I know how life in Canada is, and the privileges we have in Canada as healthcare, the advanced technology, the luxury that everybody around the world looks on because Canadians have somewhat free healthcare. Somewhat free healthcare. Just some impacts on the healthcare and some of the most significant challenges that nurses in Gaza face or are facing currently on a daily basis due to what's going on. It's not a normal situation. I would say the health sector in Gaza before the 7th of October, before everything that has been going on, it was already a little bit complicated with the amount of cases that would be coming to the ERs, with the amount of patients that are attended to the departments, with the less amount of employees that are employed. So that itself was already somewhat of a challenge to keep up with patients that are coming in, with medications that need to be given out. Because we know how Gaza before was, the majority of the medications and medical supplies were donated in Gaza. Each here and there, we would have different supplies that come in with different uses, for example, like needles, cannulas, and tourniquets. So you would have to be like, oh, this is something new that we're seeing. Somewhat in Canada, it's only when something really is new that comes in, but most of the time it's the same equipment, and it's during the orientation you're able to use it. So during a genocide like this, when something new comes in and you gotta learn how to use it, and then you only have a specific amount that you need to be using on people, that just causes you I'm gonna say a small stress factor, because easily you could like you understand the process, so you understand what's the outcome for this item or equipment, you would know what it's going for. The stress factor does not just come from the overload of working, because I know in Canada nurses where clinics would be 8 hours, hospitals are 12 hours, working at 12-hour shifts, and then going home, you barely have any time to rest, you barely have any time to do whatever you want to do in a daily person's life. So how could it be for somebody living in a war, living in a genocide? Here, I'm not going to be just talking about myself. I don't want to mention the whole nursing industry in Gaza, or co-workers and colleagues and medical people, because each person has his own story with resisting and with being able to keep working and volunteering. The stress factor comes with the overload of working, the overflow of patients, the equipment being the lack of medical equipment, lack of colleagues, lack of time to rest, lack of food, lack of vitamins, lacking everything almost. And then in a situation where the hospital normally it's already like overloaded, and then in a situation like this, all the people that their homes got destroyed, that have been told to evacuate, they would go to, as Dr. Rassan said in the beginning, they would go to UNRWA schools, or they would go to hospitals that they should be like safe place. This would bring us into our second topic I'll be mentioning in a bit, for the international laws that have been, unfortunately, all of them have been limited out when it comes to speaking about Muslim. So the pressure and the challenges, again, that just these are just very basic and general points that I'm talking about. For example, when there's a doctor that, or a nurse or a medical worker that receives his family or admits his family members that their home has been airstrike, the stress that he has would cause him, it would affect him in a way that he would not be able to work for a little while. And that happening also, like, it makes you already have a lack of team members, and now you have one more down, and it makes it worse when it's a very experienced team member. Like you can all imagine having a star on a team, and then when he's out, they would still be able to perform, but the critical performance, the star is not there, so it's just it causes somewhat of not it doesn't lessen the confidence. It you got to learn whatever you got to do. There's a lot of time that a student doctor would have to take care or be in charge of the ER for a while since there aren't any like healthcare workers. And this happened almost, it started happening or increased after Shifa Hospital was invaded the first time, after a lot of doctors have been forced to go to the south. It also happened in the Baptist Hospital. And during times like this, it continuously happens with a lot of doctors, my colleagues, people like I was working with. They're always saying like I had to hold the shift by myself. We didn't have anybody, and the amount of cases. Sometimes the doctor isn't able to change his gloves or is working with his bare hands with patient's blood, and then he has to do from one patient to another. And then there's a lack of water. They don't have water, so like he would have to put hand sanitizer or use his own hands or the gloves that he's wore already with one patient, doing it with another. So just thinking of the luxurious and advanced technology we have in Canada, and then tying it to what you're working and what's going on in Gaza, it's a big shift for somebody that has been in Canada. I know a lot of nurses, medical workers in Canada that message saying what you guys are doing is something like nobody can comprehend. But that is when I feel like they should also be participating in trying to get medical teams to enter Gaza, because at a time we're speaking right now, the medical workers, a lot of them have been detained, a lot of them have been killed, a lot of them have had to forcefully leave with family that needed a member with them to be able to leave Gaza, and others left due to the severe situation and critical state that they're in. Again, a lot of doctors have stayed, and as Dr. Hassan said, Dr. Mohammed Abdul that was there, he was the director of the hospital. He could have easily left the hospital, but his word was, "I'm going to stay and stay with the patients, stay in the hospital I'm in." And that also brings us to another doctor, a bunch of doctors actually, just on top of my head, but one doctor that I know and his story went viral was Dr. Adnan al She was the head department of orthopedics in Shifa Hospital. He was killed in the Israeli prisons due to severe torture. He was killed under torture. And he was just a doctor in the hospital. He could have also easily left, but his words were, "I'm going to stay in the hospital as long as there's patients here. No matter what happens, we're going to be here." And he's been abducted, killed under torture in Israeli prisons. So that's just that gives us a point of resistance and resilience to the healthcare workers that stayed. But it's not fair for them because they are not involved in anything, but they're taken and they're being tortured in order to be saying stuff that they have no idea about, or the IOF wants them to forcefully say stuff that's not even right or true or that's been with them in order to get something against the health sectors that are that people are sheltering in or being displaced in. Moving on to the human rights and violations, as I was studying our nursing masters, there were some courses, and in one of the courses we learned about the Alma-Ata Declaration that took place in Finland in the 1970s, 1980s, I believe, something like that. I just forgot the exact year, and which the declaration, the conference was health for all. And then 10 years later, they had another conference which said all for health. And the point or the cause that it's changed, they realized that health can't be for everybody if people aren't willing to cooperate with each other, or each person isn't able to help in order to make health for everyone. And that's now just a human right where health should be, it's not just a privilege, it's a right for everybody to have. Unfortunately, we moved on to saying all for health, which makes more sense that everybody should be working together to provide health and provide care for everybody in no matter what state they're in, no matter how bad their their injury, their disease, whatsoever it is. And right now we're just talking about injuries. We haven't talked about the communicable diseases. We haven't talked about people not being able to access any medications. We haven't talked about people leaving anesthesia, just having to bear with Acamol or Tylenol, and they would be lucky if they're able to have access for any of that. And we're also not talking about the primary care clinics that like you should be checked once a year, at least twice a year, depending on if you have a disease, every couple months. A lot of people aren't able to go and have general operations due to the overflow of the operating rooms, due to the destruction of the hospitals. The universities, the schools, everything in Gaza has unfortunately been destroyed to the extent which causes people like equipment has been destroyed, hospitals being destroyed, universities that have medical equipment, that have medical programs, if it was nursing, medicine, dentistry, and all these different types of labs that are very costly, and it's very difficult to build these in Gaza because they're all run through fundraisers from other countries for the people in Gaza in order to develop and train. Now all these stuff have been destroyed. As soon as the war is over, people in Gaza, they as soon as things are over, they're willing to go back to their life. They're willing to continue their education. They're willing to do all this type of stuff. We see how resilient they are from what we share on social media. I was there. I lived in Gaza. I'm happy to say that I was there, and it's not just something I'm proud of. It is my duty, and being there. Just I visited a couple, like maybe 2-3 weeks before all this happened. The intention was for a visit, finish off my thesis, and then to like defend my thesis. I ended up trying to defend myself, and until today, I'm still waiting for the 7th of October in order to go and meet my professor that I have not heard a single or had a single message from whenever all this happened, due to the cut off internet connections, signals, and whatsoever. And I have no idea if he's. One time I read that his son has been martyred, and after that I tried to send a message saying if things were all right, checking in, and I of course haven't received any message. So all these stress factors, it's just like popping in at you everywhere you go, and the trauma that is caused is something very severe. So the international laws and the destroyment of everything, these should be places that are like a red line for any type of attack that happens. It shouldn't be attacking hospitals that are treating patients. It shouldn't be attacking to medical workers that are trying to do their duty. This does put thoughts for people. Like I received messages, or like when I was with some of my relatives, they're like, you know what, take care of yourself right now. You don't need to be going to the hospital. That was after the first invasion of the Shifa hospital, and unfortunately, the second invasion was even very more worse invasion. As that time they abducted and killed over 500 medical staff from all different sectors of the medical field. That does adopt a feeling for people that it's not safe, but people in Gaza, they do believe that it is one life that you're gonna live, and you have to do what you gotta do, because this is a chance for you to help your people, to give the service you have, and you've been chosen to be a nurse or a doctor or an anesthesiologist or a RT or whatsoever. And it's just the least you can help. A lot of people in Gaza that only have first aid certificates are up and helping do first aid for people at the campsite they're in, or the school they're sheltering in. A lot of people, like I know a couple teachers that are even trying to help as much as they can, just because the lack of what people are lacking. How people can support from Canada or anywhere in the world in the medical industry and in the medical field, we know the lack of medical workers everywhere in Canada, in the world almost, especially for nurses. And we know how much of a word that they hold, because we always say the doctors are the brain of the hospital. However, the nurses are the heart of the hospital or the field that they're working in. Without the brain, you won't function, but your heart could still be beating. So somewhat you will still be alive. But without the heart, then of course there is no blood supply going anywhere into any organs of your body. So officially you will be dead. The nurses have a big role with learning about what's happening in Gaza. I'm not going to talk about the politic issue. I'm going to talk about the humanitarian issue of having the right of medical supplies in, having the right of treatment for patients, having the right of antibiotics is the least medical drug we're talking about, and like all these rights just to be able to have treatment for injured people right now. We're not even going to talk about normal patients that want to go and get checked. When I left, a lot of people sent me saying like, hey, you should go and get. I know I do have like some problems. I have malnourishment and everything. I also have an irritable heartbeat with everything that you've been through, with the malnourishment that you're going in. But it just feels so weird and messed up just going to get a medical checkup while people right now are not even able to get Tylenol for whatsoever pain, for any painkiller that or treatment and pain they're going through. Adding up to that, the unions in Canada, I'm not sure if they will stand with being humanitarian, or you don't have to be Palestinian to stand for the cause of Palestine. Again, I'm not going to talk about the politics issue. I'm going to talk about the humanitarian cause, because everybody does deserve to have the right of being treated. Everybody deserves to have the right of being fed. Everybody deserves to have the right of living a normal life. Everyone deserves to have the right of living under a safe roof. Everybody has the right to just have a normal life, do the normal daily activities of any person, instead of waking up not knowing if you're going to have water today, not knowing if you're going to have a line, not knowing how long your line will be to use the washroom, not knowing how bad it's going to be in order to get yourself some food. If you have an old family member, how you're going to get them to the hospital, how you're going to get them medication. If you have a baby, how you're going to get them baby formula. If you have females, how you're going to get them pads or dignity packs. And there's all these stress factors. Like, it's very difficult to explain them all in detail, because it's like you'll always miss something, and always whatever you're seeing on social media is only like 10 to 20% of what's actually happening and the life people are living in Gaza, because you have the responsibility. Again, medical workers, they have families, they have responsibilities. You have a responsibility when the place is being attacked. You got to go check on your family. You got to get them a place to be, again, to be displaced in, how to evacuate. And it's just so much things that goes on the person's head. Like, you are not able to even function properly. Right now, I have a friend of mine. He's a medical student, and he was volunteering from the very beginning, and I really appreciate what he's doing. And I always tell him, you're one of the people that your voice should be raising, or you should be speaking more. And his reply was like, it's not even, I know I should, but it's not the time, because there's a lot of people that are in need for the service, rather than just speaking to the world, because we've already showed the world everything possible, yet the world doesn't want to, or they're trying, but with having the world leaders closing their eyes, nothing much can be done, unless being on ground and helping with your bare hands, trying to advocate and give the services as much as you can with any service you have. So my point, the nurses in Canada, if they all step up to the unions, if they all ask for having like an actual team from all over Canada, not just like a team of 10, 20, 15. I know it's already happened before, but like having continuous teams with with advanced training. So I'm not going to say proper. I already know the medical field in Canada, they're advanced, but with more advanced to the cases that are being received, because in Gaza, the cases that have been admitted to hospitals, we've never seen them in medical programs, or we haven't experienced dealing with these types of cases even prior and in previous wars. So advanced, experienced medical teams should continuously being sent into Gaza, because the people in Gaza, the people working on ground, are very their adrenaline level is going down, and when that goes down, then the tiredness, the exhaustness for 9 months starts to show. You start to become getting more sick, more. I'm not gonna say lazy, but your body just needs that type of rest. It needs the amount of vitamins to keep going. And also, they've all already been sick. Most of my friends that I know, they've already got status A from different patients that they're dealing with, because they are the ones dealing with like hands-on blood shrapnels and all this infections from person to person, and this can easily be spread. Um, and we don't have any medications to maybe prohibit that or delay getting any of these infections. So a lot of medical teams should be sent into Gaza to give the medical staff a break, to get some different medications, and also if people speak up to their unions or if they even like take a day off protesting that we don't want to work unless there's proper aid and proper help sent to the people in Gaza. Again, nothing has to do with politics. It's just being humanitarian. It's having humanity for others to have the same type of health. In Canada, the wait time in a normal hospital would be from 6 to 12 hours. I think that's the average. In Gaza, you can imagine the wait time that's supposed to be. However, with the consecutive work, the wait time is a lot less. Not the best not the best treatment is given, but it's something just to keep them consistent. A lot of people are dying because they are not being able to evacuate to get treatment. They're not being able to go operations and not getting the right treatment that is done. I don't want people to go against giving people in Canada treatment, but like it should be done to show the world that they are doing something, to show their unions that they do have a word and they are not just slaves of working for any type of company for whatsoever. You do have a voice. It's your responsibility to use it in the way you believe is possible. That's why we all have a brain. We all understand what's going on, and we all can talk and fight for whatsoever reason we want, if it was good or bad. I'm not going to tell anybody what more to do. You guys all are understanding what's going on in Gaza. And again, we're just talking about brief and general points that are going on. I do hope that there is a ceasefire soon. I do hope people are able to, more people are able to be allowed in Gaza. I previously contacted NGOs to be able to go back in, but I learned that being a Palestinian, you're not allowed to go in Palestine again until like something is worked out. And Palestinians in Gaza, they are not even allowed to leave Palestine to go out. So the situation with they're like playing with the people of Gaza, they're playing with their treatment, they're playing with how to starve them and everything that should be a right for them. Sorry, I took a bunch of the time, and maybe that's why I was left for last. I hope this small talk was pretty much beneficial after my colleagues and the speakers have already mentioned everything. And I just hope I added more to raising the awareness and advocating for the people of Gaza and just giving you a glimpse. Again, I'm not going to say what I said was detailed stuff. They were just brief general ideas. You can learn more of what's happening on your own time, just due to the time of this event running out. And I'm sorry if I took more than time I could have.
Thank you. Thank you for all your important words, Ahmed, and for everyone for sharing with us the struggle of health workers from the front lines in Palestine. Now we want to hear from you guys, our guests. You can send us questions or comments in the writing through the Q&A function. And thank you to all those that have already submitted questions. We appreciate your thoughtful contributions. Actually, the first question we want to pose is for Ahmed. Since you are in Ontario, we're wondering if you have a message that you want to project to ONA, our Ontario Nurses Association. Go ahead, Ahmed.
Okay, so if it's just something, I'm not going to be detailed again. I'm just going to say something really brief. There should be more education for what's happening in Gaza in Ontario hospitals or in like there's always workshops and conferences that are happening for different beliefs for different societies. It shouldn't be something. It should be something that's happening for also the people in Palestine. A lot of people that are fighting for Palestine are not Palestinian. They're not straight from Gaza. They just have a heart. They're human and they wanna learn more and they want to be able to help. I was just reading some of the questions. Maybe I could also just quickly answer them. There are a lot of different NGOs, WHO, Fajr, Rahma, so many that are sending teams into Gaza. I'm not sure who in Canada is running that, but I think it should be more talked about. I think it should be like maybe published to people. I know a lot of people in Canada, a lot of nurses, they want to go in and help. There could be a qualification process for that. If anybody does know anybody in that, feel free to reach out. I am really happy to be part of them, to be able to assess them in any way possible. And that would be something really, really, really supportive, and it will change a lot of people's minds of how Canada is not supporting Gaza in the best way possible. And when they send a medical team into Gaza, it would be something very big. And it would be something a lot of people would be proud of, and they would look up to Canada as like a country that is supporting people in Gaza in the least humanitarian way possible.
Thank you, Ahmed. Actually, and the nurses that have organized this webinar are ONA members, and we did this through Labor for Palestine, not really with ONA as organizing, but thank you for your words and for sharing your thoughts. We do have another question. The next question is, what can Canadian nurses do to support nurses in Palestine? So how can nurses volunteer in Canada? So Ahmed, you did touch on that, how we can volunteer, but specifically, do you know, or for any of our speakers, how can nurses volunteer in Gaza?
I'm not sure if anybody wants to talk about it, but I could just say something quickly. The process to entering Gaza is not an easy process. It has to be done through an organization that's qualified in order to allow people into Gaza. A lot of people have reached out for that. And that's why I mentioned some organizations. You guys already probably know the UN allows people, or like they get teams inside. There's Rahma around the world that's located more in the States. There's Fajr, I believe, that's also located in the States. There are a couple different ones, but these are the ones that are on the top of my head. That's why I was trying to say if there's something in Canada that can be done, because I believe Canada has a big authority and they have a big word if they want to get something like this done. Canada is just one of the strong countries in speaking and doing what they want to do, believing it being right. They can cooperate with the organizations, or they can make their own organization. I don't think they would need that much because they are easily qualified as a Canadian country in order to allow people in Gaza, but through a legal way, through qualified personnel. And that way, a lot of people from Canada will show that they're helping, and they will talk about how their trip went to Gaza, or how they applied, how they were able to, how they were trying to get in. A lot of people, when they do hear that, they will be really happy. They will feel the support. I know a lot of people that have tried, but they've been denied. So again, it matters about the intention. They tried. They did more than one thing in order to be able to get in. Unfortunately, they weren't able. So that whatever funds they raised, whatever medical supplies they were able to have with them in order to go into Gaza, they weren't specifically from Canada. They sent those to doctors that are going in. They sent them to organizations that are going in. That could be a way. And also another way could just be always advocating for the nurses in your place that you're working in, because I do believe a lot of people in Canada still don't know the details or the actual stuff that are going on, and the lack of everything that's happening in hospitals in Gaza. So whenever you're at a shift doing a normal procedure, just be like, hey, the people in Gaza don't even have the luxurious right to do any of the stuff that we're having in this type of treatment.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you for your answers. Aya and Ghazal, if you would like to put your cameras on, you guys could also answer these questions. So if you have any input on how nurses in Canada can volunteer in Gaza, please feel free.
آية وغزل، السؤال إذا كيف بيقدروا الممرضين والممرضات اللي بكندا يساعدوا داخل القطاع أو برا بالضفة، فإذا بتحبوا إذا في شيء حابين تحكوا عن هذا الموضوع.
من خلال الاعتصامات طبعا، ومن خلال الهاشتاج على وسائل التواصل الاجتماعي، من خلال جمع تبرعات بعدها يعني يرسلوهم للمنظمات الصحية والمنظمات الطبية المرضى والمصابين، خلال إرسال وفود طبية خلال الحرب وبعد الحرب طبعا للتخفيف في المجال الصحي.
So the nurses and the healthcare workers in Canada can support by continue to protest, of course, if you're able to raise awareness through your social media platforms, send donations to the organizations that are getting aid inside Gaza. I know that sorry, this is me speaking now. I know that Ahmed, you also touched on this. If there's any specific organizations, I know that you said the United Nations, but is it the UNRWA? Is it the UNICEF for children? Is it UNHCR? So I'm not sure which organizations, if there's an organization specific. وآية السؤال إلك كمان إذا في منظمة يعني مختصة، يعني إذا بتعرفي اسم المنظمة بالضبط اللي أنت شايفة إنه كثير عم بيقدموا مساعدة، كثير منيح إنه نحكي عن هاي المنظمة.
طبعا منظمة أطباء لا حدود بتساعد كثير المرضى والمصابين وبتساعد الأطفال.
So I believe that Doctors Without Borders and Médecins Sans Frontières are one of the organizations that are helping provide aid in Gaza.
كنت رح أحكي مثل ما حكت آية إنه كتير مهم الاعتصامات، إنه يعملوا اعتصامات خصوصا الممرضين والدكاترة بالخارج، لأنه إحنا الممرضين والدكاترة اللي موجودين بالضفة والقطاع لما بنشوف زملائنا بالخارج بدعمونا بهاي الطريقة، هذا الإشي بعطينا تفاؤل، يعني بخلينا على طول إنه دافع إنه نكمل بشغلنا وقوة كمان. بشوف إنه كتير مهم إنه يبعثوا أخصائيين نفسيين خصوصا في بعد انتهاء الحرب، لأنه كتير 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 الوضع سيء من هاي الناحية. يعني
سوري
بس
أعطيك غزل، بس بدي أترجم أول شيء حكيتيه قبل ما أنسى. So Ghazal also agrees with Aya that it's very important for doctors and nurses to continue protesting in Canada and elsewhere, because when they see that doctors and nurses outside of Palestine are supporting them, it gives them a moral boost. It gives them hope and inspiration further. Well, you are the inspiration to us, but it also gives them a bit of hope that they're not alone and that there's the people outside are seeing them and hearing them. And Ghazal started talking about the psychological support, especially after the war. إذا بتحبي تكملي غزل عن المعالجة.
كنت بدي أحكي إنه يعني التمريض والدكاترة ومجال الرعاية الصحية، كل العاملين بمجال الرعاية الصحية أكثر ناس بحاجة لهذا الإشي، يعني لكتر ما شافوا خلال شغلهم.
So Ghazal is talking about how the nurses and the doctors themselves can benefit from psychological support because of the things that they've witnessed and continue to witness on a daily basis. It does take a toll.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ghazal. Thank you, Aya. Thank you, Ahmed, for answering these questions. We do have another question coming in. How can we organize as nurses, but also avoid repercussions? This one is actually for the panel, not for the speakers, so go ahead. Just waiting for the panel to answer our question. Okay. Hassan, do you want to answer this question in particular?
Sorry, can you repeat the question for me, please?
Sure.
Yeah.
How can we organize as nurses, but also avoid repercussions?
Okay. I was actually about to. My name is Hassan Husseini. First of all, I'm a National Steering Committee member of Labor for Palestine. And I was going to drop the link, if it hasn't already been provided, to the Labor for Palestine website. On the Labor for Palestine website, we have a special link to a Palestine legal referral service that ourselves and about 65 lawyers across Canada are on standby to try to support workers, generally speaking, for if they face any repercussions at work or dismissed or disciplined or whatever the case may be. This referral service is available to everyone. You can contact them and they will be able to provide you with legal support on how to exercise your right under Canadian law. But of course, if you're a member of union, ONA, or any other affiliated members of the Canadian Federation of Nurses Unions, that you can actually also use your collective agreements through these lawyers to help you out to push back against the workplace harassment, I would call it, that folks are subjected to for speaking out in support of Palestinian human rights. And if there are any specific issues that folks would like to bring to our attention, we're certainly, as an organization, Labor for Palestine, are ready to help and support even over and above and beyond. And so folks will drop the email address if it hasn't already been provided, that they can reach out to us, but it's L4P. So that's L4P Canada@gmail.com. Reach out and we'll be more than happy to help you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Hassan, for doing that. We do have one more question. Is there any medical aid entering Gaza since the Rafah border was closed by Israel? If any of our speakers know of this answer, please feel free.
I'm going to jump in really quickly to answer a bit of that question. Since the very beginning of this genocide, speaking of 2.2 million, that statistic has been only updated in 2021. So in Gaza, there's a lot more people than 2.2 million people. The first 20 days, there hasn't been any aid, medical aid, food aid, any type of aid that has been allowed into Gaza. The first time 20 trucks were allowed in, most of them had stuff that had nothing to do with surviving or giving aid in a genocide. A lot of, like, when we were getting some stuff, a lot of them were shrouds, a lot of them were packs of like PEE for COVID, a lot of them were COVID swabs. A lot of stuff that had been entering in the very beginning was very useless, was very unhelpful. Very lately, after the Rafah crossing border has been closed, the amount of things that have been entered to maybe give them a small hit that they're entering stuff is not going to be 10% of what's needed in Gaza, especially the north. We have seen that in a different sense of the food that's being sent in. So the that they send in is supposed to be food and medical supplies or medical aid. Food in the north of Gaza and in the south of Gaza is already being cut out. In the north of Gaza, people are eating anything that they could find edible. So since food is not going in, a lot of medical stuff, medical supplies and all this type of stuff is not going in either. So we do have a lot of complaints, especially when they invade hospitals. They destroy a lot of stuff in them. Everything in the hospitals that they invade would be destroyed. Recently, I was surprised when they asked for them to evacuate, and then people started taking equipment from the European hospital, because the European hospital was the hospital that's getting the supplies that come from NGOs outside of Gaza. So this hospital tried to get as much critical equipment they needed to take them into another hospital that was already destroyed, that they're just going to rebuild or make stuff in that hospital work again. So the medical aid that's being sent into Gaza, even if there is medical aid being sent in, it's very limited to a point that it's not covering maybe 10 to 20% of the medical need and the medical supplies that are needed in Gaza right now.
Thank you, Ahmed. Just as a follow-up, do you know if Doctors Without Borders are active in Gaza?
So Doctors Without Borders, they were active in Gaza. They're active before this war. They have plenty of offices. There's Doctors Without Borders, France, Belgium, Germany. It's not just Doctors Without Borders. There's so many organizations that have medical teams that are being able to be sent in. However, Doctors Without Borders, I was a little bit not shocked when Ghazal and Aya mentioned them, because I do see them all the time. In fact, in Gaza, we've had some conferences, we watched some conferences with them. So they do get supplies in. When in the very beginning they were at Shifa Hospital, they did have specific programs or campaigns that they were doing for dressings and burnt cases and patients and
patients with platina and all that type of dressings. So I can confirm that they are officially running in Gaza, in addition to plenty other organizations and individuals that are sending help and different type of aid into Gaza.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for confirming that. Thank you all for your informed and thoughtful remarks. We are now out of time. In closing, I do want to thank each and every one of you for your participation and commitment today. Our discussion has highlighted the critical intersection of healthcare, ethics, and global human rights. As healthcare professionals, we hold a profound responsibility to advocate for justice and to stand in solidarity with those facing oppression worldwide. The challenges we face demand collective action. Together, we can amplify our voices and leverage our positions to effect meaningful change. Let us continue to educate ourselves, to challenge complicity, and to advocate for policies that uphold human dignity and rights everywhere. Thank you for joining us in support of the Palestinian people. Struggle for justice and liberation. Let's move forward together, learning and acting as one in pursuit of a more just and equitable world. If you do wish to support our advocacy work, please join Labor for Palestine Nurses Caucus. To join, please email us, and Hassan has already put the email in the chat. Finally, Labor for Palestine Nurses Caucus has put together a petition. So, petition to the Canadian Federation of Nurses Unions and the affiliated provincial unions, challenging their performative allyship, calling for consistency in their solidarity. Our main ask is to support the arms embargo and BDS movement, among other actions, which you can read in the backgrounder document found in the petition, which will be linked in the chat. The petition is in the chat, like I said. We ask you to sign the petition in support of our advocacy work. The French translation for the petition will be available tomorrow. Thank you. Signing this petition can also be just as effective as donating. Thank you. This ends our webinar. I'd like to thank our speakers one last time for continuing to show up despite the horrendous conditions you are forced to work under. Goodbye, everyone, and may we continue to advocate for a free Palestine. Thank you.